Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show, where I'm very happy to have Blake Christian here in studio. He's a CPA, accountant, and more, a business entrepreneur, if you will, as well. Welcome. It's great to have you here.
Good to see you.
You know, we were just talking off camera about all the stuff you've done, and I thought I had a legal pad filled out of things I've done. Yours might arguably be longer list.
Well, I've been in business for about 36 years. Started off right out of school as a CPA, but the path has led me to a lot of other opportunities, and so over the course of my career, I've started about 20 different businesses, ranging from restaurants to software companies, and working on a workforce housing project up here, a headphone company, and so you just get exposed to a lot of entrepreneurs that need help, and oftentimes we come in and take them to the next step, or sometimes they're my ideas that have ended up being a business.
That's awesome, for sure. And with that knowledge, you've written a book.
Yes.
Which is pretty exciting. We kind of have the mock-up here. Can I share this?
Sure.
This is great. So the benefits of becoming a CPA-preneur.
Right.
Which is not easy to say, but
no.
I'm excited about the content here.
Right. So I have to give my editor credit for the title, and just as he was reading my draft, he said, "Well, you're really a CPA-preneur," and I couldn't argue with that. But so again, it's kind of goes through the balance of having your technical core competency, but using that as a platform to generate other revenue sources, and kind of go into more interesting things.
That's an interesting concept, because I've seen lawyers who have done other things that seem outside the realm of law, like representation for talent and for athletes and things like that. That's kind of their sort of shift a little bit to other things. And for CPAs, starting businesses and kind of the capital investment side of things, a little different. But yet, who should know better than a CPA?
Right.
Right.
Right. Yeah, and it's not always perfect. I can't say that all 20 of those have paid huge dividends, but most of them, we've either built up and sold, or they're still in existence and thrown off cash. And so it's we have the inside scoop, and so as you said, we can usually tell if it has a high probability of success on the front end, and so we're in a good position there. Well,
that's a good thing. You probably should squash a couple of my dream deals that maybe don't have the potential I think they do. But doing the right thing. I mean, making sure that you've got a good plan, kind of the integral part to this.
Right, and and that's another part of what we do, is sometimes we do crush dreams, and
you kind of have to sometimes, because you look at it and go, look, this is going to bankrupt you if you do it.
Right, and we've done that. You look at a business plan and you just say, look, this is. Sometimes we'll tweak it. Sometimes it's just such a bad idea that we save them from themselves and before they blow a bunch of money.
That's because it does happen, and we see that a lot. I mean, you look at some of the businesses. Look at Main Street. You would assume that any business that moves into Main Street wildly successful, because there's lots of people, right?
Exactly.
That's not the case.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of competition.
Yeah, exactly. So important to kind of get down to the minutia of it. And I want to talk about that, because I'm looking at some of the, the contents of the book here, and talking about CPAs as unique team members. That's obvious, is what we were just sort of talking about. But and the firm's strategic planning. Again, kind of where we're headed here. But let's talk about this one: marketing, practice development, and strategic growth. Tell me a little bit about that.
Right, so it's mainly written for professional services firms, but it can also be applied to business owners. And if you can have the best idea in the world, but if you're not getting the word out to your audience and your potential customers or clients, you're going to die on the vine. Right. And again, we see that all of the time. So it's critical to get the word out there, being able to articulate your business plan, be able to talk about the value add of your service or your product, and draw those people in. And obviously social media, the web has really revolutionized that. In the past, and the present, traditional advertising, it's really hard to tell if you've made an impact, if you've brought in customers. But with social media, I mean, you can tie in, you can follow those people, how they got to you, and see the effectiveness of your web or social media campaigns.
Yeah.
Minute by minute,
and
so,
right down the line, every
right.
part of that.
Right, and it allows you to react, on a daily or weekly basis, where you can't get that with the traditional advertising. You run an ad in the paper, you don't, it's really hard to tell if that customer came in because of that ad.
For sure, that's a big part of it. I wanted to discuss this one, planning your firm's growth or contraction.
Right.
Okay, talk about that.
Well,
I know I've seen, and maybe I'll just throw this out there and you tell me if this is what we're talking about here. But I've worked with several businesses in marketing, and I've taken them from starting out as a startup all the way to we're completely underwater at this point. We're a saturation point is what I like to call it, right? Where now we need capital investment to grow suddenly. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes, it's all of that. With the full spectrum we see, and that is a critical part. And companies that file bankruptcy they don't file bankruptcy because they don't have revenue, they don't have cash, but they get in that cash crunch and they can't go to the next level. And so our job is to identify those needs, months
way earlier.
Right. Because, if a client's coming to us and they're already underwater, that is not the time. It's just like they say, you don't want to go to the bank and borrow when you need it. You set up your line of credit long before you need it. And because you go in there and you say, hey, we're running out of cash, give us a loan. They start looking at your business plan and they say, this is not a good time to be loaning you money.
Right, this is not what we were expecting, not what you should be expecting. And frankly, it's kind of weird when you think about that. Yeah, drowning successfully.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's kind of an odd situation, but we see it with lots of companies.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So planning, again, it gets back to that. And this is where an accountant could tell you that well ahead of time, could help you secure some funds to make sure that when you're ready for a growth cycle, you've got the cash flow to continue that.
Right.
That's super important.
Right, and it's really important on the client side that they keep us informed, and if they modify their business plan, send that to the CPA, sit down, set a meeting, talk through that, because we don't want to find out at year end that they pivoted a different way business-wise, and we could have helped them. So
it's not the time of Howard Hughes, is it? You think about, I remember watching The Aviator again, and just thinking about how he was with his accountant. Just spend the money, spend it where you do this. We've got lots of it.
Right.
And there were times when we didn't. But the difference was that was a world which was growing, not just a small segment. That was a different time. This is not a time where you can kind of get away with just spend and hope.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so a much different situation for sure.
Yep.
All right, I want to continue this conversation, but I also want to switch to one of your business sides of things. We're going to take a quick break, come back, and we'll talk a little bit about housing, among other things.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a surprise right after this. Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show, where we continue our conversation with Blake Christian, and we're going to switch gears just a little bit. As we've talked about being a CPA-preneur, you have found an interesting segment that I think has been so underviewed and underappreciated, the need here. We've talked about it a little bit, but not nearly to the point it needs to, and that is housing in Park City, especially for seasonal workers, for low-income families, for people who are looking just simply to keep it simple, simply to keep it simple.
Right.
And that is what you're kind of looking at right now with container homes.
Right, so we're building our first prototype down in Salt Lake, and so it should be up here in Park City within I'm hoping about the next 6-7 weeks. And so we'll have it up here for the duration of the winter months.
Awesome.
As you know, we have 3,500 temporary workers that come to work the ski resorts, and the housing is kind of hodgepodge. You know, they do kind of a speed dating system to find places. But once they've found a basement to stay in, the problem is, you know, how do they get to work every day? And as great as our bus service is, it's still a problem for them to get to work. So I had this concept actually when I was back in Long Beach, California. We had similar issues with housing prices and things, and my office overlooked the ports of LA and Long Beach, so I'd see millions of containers every day. And there's, you know, you can buy these for, you know, a couple $1,000s. And my original vision was, you know, we would build these, have them planted here for the winter, and then you could move them up to Jackson Hole or to the Grand Canyon or to Yosemite during the summer. And because you just throw them on a truck and go. As I researched it more, there's clearly, you know, year-round need for these. But the beauty of the containerized housing is that it's truly can be temporary, and so we can really try this within, you know, within the city and the region, and it's not like you're building a, you know, 16-room condo and everybody's saying, hey, you know, we don't know if we really want it there. But if, you know, we can try these for a couple of years, and my feeling is, you know, once they're planted, they're going to stay, but we can remove these within a couple of days. They're light on the land. Nobody would ever know they were there after a couple of days.
Yeah, a zero impact kind of situation. We've got a little bit of video. Let's show what some of these look like, because I think people are kind of interested to see them. We'll talk about them a little bit as we show this for you. But these container homes becoming pretty popular. It's amazing what you can do with them. So we're bringing up the video right now, and it's impressive. I mean, look at you make some room for windows and for doors and different things, and kind of change stuff up, and all of a sudden.
Yeah, so this is a 4 bunk bed sleeping quarters. So you have 4-person capacity, fully self-contained. This one we're building right now is completely off-grid, solar heated. It's got you know, heated radiant floors.
Wow.
It's very nice, and I would live in this. Not for, you know, months, but I would stay in it for a week.
Yeah, for sure.
And you know, and again, I ask every developer that I show this to, you know, tell me any project that's more green that they've run across, and they can't. And so again, it's light on the land, it's temporary, and you know, we're talking to the ski resorts. You know, our feeling, and the county and the city would like them on the ski properties, because obviously we have limited land resources, and it also eliminates their need to travel to the ski resorts and further clog up the main arteries, which is, you know, a huge problem during the winter months.
And there's a lot of these containers out there just sitting ready to go that need to be a home.
Exactly.
Talk about that. There's you saw thousands of these, and there, as you said, you can get them on the cheap.
Yeah.
So the conversion to housing, typically how much money goes into something like that?
Yeah, so there's really there's not everybody thinks there's an advantage over what we call stick build, traditional, you know, wood construction. On a square footage basis, there's actually diseconomies of scale, because you're in such a compact area. It actually makes the construction a little more costly. But what you're not paying for is the land, right? Which is, you know, a huge factor, especially in the Park City area. And so you cut down the living cost, because you're not paying for you know, a half an acre of land to plant it. And so, you know, again, depending on what fit and finish people want, you know, we can do completely stripped down 45-foot containers, you know, in the 50,000, 60,000 range. But, you know, if you're this prototype that we're looking at here, just because it's the first one, and there's some inefficiencies.
Right.
You can get closer to $100,000
Wow.
for it.
But still,
Right.
when you start thinking about what this might look like, a little village of these for people to live in while they're working.
Right.
Pretty interesting idea.
Right. Well, and that's really the long-term concept is, once there's community buy-in to the concept, would be to buy 10 acres and then put a 20,000 square foot common area in the middle of it.
Yeah.
And so, these are really, use these more for just, I call them almost sleeping pods. And then you would have this, chalet experience for all the workers that they could go and watch big screen TVs,
Reminds me of the Olympic Village a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, which
and
I think
so,
is pretty cool.
And millennials love that kind of thing.
That's how
and
they work.
And the ski workers would love that, because all they want to do is come and ski and work, but then during the daytime they have a nice experience, or when they get off of work, and you'd have food service there, and I was even envisioning they would have access to grills and ovens if they wanted to cook their own food.
That's awesome. Well, it certainly looks interesting. I'm kind of excited to see the concept as you bring your first version up here to Park City, so we'll look forward to that for sure. We're going to take a break, come back, and for just a moment I want to talk IRS and some of the changes that are coming in the world of tax reform. That's coming up right after this. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Mountain Morning Show, and I'm very happy to continue our conversation with Blake Christensen, CPA and CPA-preneur as well. And all right, regardless of how you feel about President Trump, there's no doubt he's shaken up the world quite a little bit, and he's like shaking it like a snow globe for real. This guy is looking to make some big changes to the tax code.
Right.
And you guys are already looking at it going, okay, this is what might happen. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it's, I think for most of us, this is a roller coaster ride for sure.
Right. We're going to know a lot more next week when he rolls out his third version of tax reform. Keeps changing.
Right.
But basically, we're looking at his main focus is lowering the business tax rates. Mm-hmm. We have the fourth highest tax rates on corporations in the world.
Wow.
And there's just no question about that. And it does hurt our worldwide competitiveness. And so he wants to unleash, some job growth and things by bringing down the business tax rates to a more moderate level. Now he's calling for a 15% rate. The GOP's calling for a 25% rate. I'm kind of leaning a lot more towards the GOP. I mean, if we got a 25% rate versus a 36% rate on corporations right now, and they also want to apply this to flow-through entities like LLCs and S-corps.
Right.
And so if we got a 25%, I think that would be a huge win, and I think we'd get all the stimulus.
The right spot. It's
right.
not too, we don't want to get too dramatic. In fact, really, anytime you get wildly, when you start to make wild changes, you'll get a wild reaction, which is, I think, what people don't really realize.
Right.
Right. You don't want to drop much below that 25%.
Right, and that makes us competitive worldwide. Yeah. We're hitting about the average. The other thing is we have a $20 trillion deficit, and until that gets under control, I'm not one to want to, why are you going to negotiate against yourself and bring it down to 15 when 25 will make most business people pretty happy? And
get you closer to, and keep paying the bills,
right.
so to speak. Let's discuss this a little more, because there are a lot of different facets of this conversation, certainly. One, obviously, stimulating business. We've already seen a little bit of that just because of the way people feel, right?
Right.
For you in accounting, that's kind of always a little bit of a nebulous area, right?
Yep.
Because people's feelings equate to them spending.
Right.
And that's hard to gauge and judge, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. Consumer confidence, and since we're such a consumer-driven economy in the U.S.
Yeah, we base I want to throw this out. Sorry to interrupt, but I want to throw this out there. I always thought this is funny. One of the leading economic indicators is RV sales.
Yep.
which is like, do people? I wonder if people realize how kind of funny that is, because that's one of the ones where like, okay, we got disposable income, we'll throw it in an RV.
Right.
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 It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But that's some of the things you guys have to use to gauge confidence.
Sure. Sure. And so again, I do think a tax cut will have a very stimulative effect on the economy. So I'm all for it. And I think we do have some bipartisan support for some tax reform. We haven't really changed, had a big overhaul since 1986.
Right.
And so we're long overdue. My only complaint, as much as Trump is shaking it up, is I don't think he's being creative and aggressive enough in tax reform. He's just tweaking rates.
Right.
We really need to change a lot of things. There's a lot of inefficiencies.
Yeah, how we do it, the process, the empire building that exists in that world of tax is outrageous.
Right, and I'm all for simplification. Even though I'm a CPA, everybody thinks, oh, you want it complicated.
No.
I'm all for simplification. I have no problem
the
with
job
that.
of simplifying it would keep you busy for a very long time.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
And so that's a good thing.
Right.
Talk about some of these things when it comes to tax reform. I want to talk a little bit about, when we talk about how it stimulates business, what is the trickle-down process of that? How does that happen?
Right. Well, again, as you put more money into consumers' pockets, they're going to be spending that on Amazon. They're going to be spending it on Main Street. They're going to buy more lift tickets and clothes.
Isn't that also the argument? I think I've used it several times for also raising the wage too, getting the gap of wage between the upper class and the middle class a little thinner.
Right, and there's definitely merit in that also. The difference is that if you raise wages, you're going to generally increase cost of goods and services, which it's kind of a vicious
create
circle.
Inflation if you're not careful.
Right. And whereas the tax cut will go right to the bottom line. I've advocated for, if you want job stimulus, for the first 12 months, don't make the employer pay half of the FICA tax, the Social Security tax, because that's employers, and we deal with them every day. The problem is when you're looking at hiring somebody maybe with a $35,000 annual salary, you start throwing in all the payroll taxes, medical, etc., and all of a sudden that person is $43,000. So you're not hiring a $35,000 person. So I think you need to encourage them to get them hired for that first year, and they're not going to fire them after a year, but lower that cost of entry.
Okay. What are some of the other things that you'd like to see in the tax reform? You say a little more creative. Let's talk about that for a moment. What are some other things you'd like to see?
Well, I do really like the fact that he wants to encourage all of the large companies to onshore their offshore profits. So there's trillions of dollars offshore that businesses are not bringing onshore because they don't want to pay tax at 36%. Right. And they've generally already paid tax in a foreign jurisdiction. So he's advocating letting them bring it back for 10%. Again, that money, but I would put other parameters on that says you can bring it back, we'll tax it at 10% if you invest it in U.S. subsidiaries or infrastructure or job creation.
We have just another moment left. I want to talk about this. Let's bring it back to local business for a minute. Cars and your business.
Okay.
Talk about that for just a second. What's the best way to put your car into your business, or should you?
Yeah. The most common question we get, so thank you for asking that. So because it's really good, in the Park City region, most people have SUVs.
Yeah.
And so if you buy a vehicle over 6,000 pounds, and people can email me and I'll tell you if it qualifies or not.
Right.
But Porsche Cayenne, the car producers make them 6,000 pounds or more, so they get this tax break. You can, if you buy it new and you use it primarily for business, it has to be over 50%. You can actually write off almost 3/4 of the vehicle's value the year you buy it.
Wow.
Now, if you lease it, we always get, hey, should I lease or buy? If you lease it, you're only going to be able to write off the business percentage of each lease payment for the most part.
And that may be, just a final thought, maybe that makes the most sense for a small business that isn't making that is not bringing in a ton of money. That lease might make the most sense because they may not have enough to write off to cover that full 3/4 of the value right at the outset.
Right.
Bigger company makes more sense, probably jump in and get all the savings right at the outset, right?
Right, right.
Okay.
So I always tell people, lease if you're buying, a new model that hasn't been proven, or an odd color.
There you go.
Put it back to the
Give it back to them when you're done.
Yeah.
All right. I want to thank you so very much. We got a lot of information there. As much what we said here, you'll find in the book as we talk about being an CPA-preneur, but also certainly working on your business and where you want to take it. Certainly having an accountant as part of your team, very important. So look to Blake Christensen for a little help from that. We'll be back right after these messages right here on the Mountain Morning Show.